Hello everybody. So in this tutorial we're going to focus specifically on just making the front end of this website. So essentially we're going to run it from our file system in the browser, not on a server just yet. As you can see, this one is running on the localhost server. We'll get to that later in future tutorials, but not in this tutorial. So we're just going to build the code to make this front end. And now that I look at this, maybe I could have chosen a different color, but oh well. So if you'd like to get right ahead into the nodeJS code for the server or move towards the Ajax, just skip ahead to whichever videos you want in the playlist. But in this video, we'll just dive right into the code for the front end here. So the first thing I did was create a new folder called Comment Section in the path tutorials. To create a new folder, you can just right-click, New, and select Folder. And then I'm going to use Visual Studio Code. Please feel free to use whichever code editor you like to use. Lots of popular ones, Sublime, Atom, even Notepad++ if you want, or yeah. So we can click here, and I've actually already got the folder open. So you can see this is the folder that we just created called Comment Section right here. And I've just opened it up here. To do that, you can just go File, Open Folder. All right, and then you just, when you open the folder, here it is. And right now it's empty. So the first thing we're going to do to make this happen is, make a HTML file, as this is an HTML page that we're going to serve up. So to start that, we're going to basically right-click, and you can say New File. And this is technically, I guess, the index page because it's the only page going to be on this website. But we could call it something more like, maybe we could call it index.html. That would make a lot of sense. But we could also call it comment section.html. But maybe since it's going to be the first page that loads up anyway, and the only page, we'll call it the index.html. Perhaps it doesn't really matter what we call this right now, because it's just the one page. But this page will basically be this page right here. So once we've done that, what we want to do next is we want the basic layout of the HTML doc. So first you declare the doc type at the top. So we can declare the doc type, and we'll call it HTML. And then, well, what do we need next? We need HTML next. And then I think the next part is head. And then within the head, you need a title. And this title, we just call it comment section. The title is going to be what appears up in the tab here. As you can see, comment section. This right here is labeling this portion right there. After the head, I think I'm forgetting something here. Is it I think it's the body. So we're going to throw that body in there like that. And, okay, I think this is it. Often, if you ever forget what that is, because, it can be hard to remember all this stuff, so you can type in W3 Schools. They have a lot of good resources, HTML tutorials, and let's see here if we scroll. Yeah, here it is. So here we go. So you can just copy and paste this. This is the sort of the skeleton structure for all HTML pages. So there it is. We want to have a H1, which is a header 1, which is going to be big and bold, and it's going to say welcome. I think that's what we did, right? Isn't that right? Let's look here again. Yeah, we got a welcome here. So the first thing we should probably do is make sure that this actually works. And also, just to show you what I meant by when we created the file in Visual Studio Code, we also created the file in the file structure. So you can see it actually comes up here. And now if we want to open this, we can open this with Chrome or whichever, and perfect. So we can see that it actually is working because this website opened, and as you can see in the URL, it opened from the file structure, not from a server, local host server in this case. So that's the difference. Of course, later in future tutorials, we're going to connect it to the server. So stay tuned for that. But right now this is working, so that's great. And we can just continue here. So we're going to use Bootstrap to help keep this website mobile responsive. And I'll show you what I mean. But to get to Bootstrap first, you just type in Bootstrap in Google, and we'll just click on this first link, and we should go to Getting Started. And you could download the code and store the code in one of your own folder, or we could copy and paste this style sheet and it'll grab it from the internet. So all we have to do is you hit copy, and what we'll do is we have to put this in the head, so we just paste that into the head of the HTML code. And I want to point out something that's really important that I've been burnt by a couple of times here. Copy and paste the style sheet link into your head before all other style sheets load to our CSS. Before all other style sheets to load our CSS. So that means this has to be the first style sheet you put. And this is important because if you don't have this first, if you put your styles like above in this area here, then it screws things up. So if you have this, you know what, you'll probably do this and you'll forget and you'll have it in the wrong order, and it's no big deal. If you realize, oh, you know what, my styles aren't loading properly, just make sure to have this Bootstrap one on top first, and then you can essentially override those methods with your custom styles underneath. And we'll actually do that just to demonstrate that. I think we had, yeah, so the welcome message is actually centered. So we'll center that in a style sheet here to just sort of demonstrate that point. But before we do that, let's save this and look what happens to the page. I believe just the default Bootstrap style should change the font of this. Yes, and as we can see, the font did change. So that means the Bootstrap is taking effect. So what we'll do is we'll add in our own style sheet below it, just to show that we can still use custom styles with Bootstrap. So style sheet is the relationship of this link, and the href, so we're going to connect to a folder within here. We haven't created this folder yet, but we will create it. So we'll call it styles / and inside the styles folder we'll have I'll just make it very clear, we'll have custom styles.css. That's the style sheet we'll have inside it. So there we go. So now let's go ahead and create that folder. You can just click this new folder button up here to do that. We'll call it styles. And then we will go into the folder and create a new file. And we'll call it custom styles.css. Excellent. And it automatically opens it for us. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to want to center that welcome message, right? We have it centered. So what we could do is we could give it an ID, or we could just center all H1. So what I mean by that is we could give this H1 header an ID and target specifically this H1, or we could target all H1s and center them. So we'll just target all H1s for now. And to center it, we will just go text, text align, text dash align, and we will center it. And we're also going to, okay, so we'll start with this. Let's start with just centering it. And we'll save it over on this side. And so now it should be centered. Yep, perfect. And as you can also tell here, it's not smashed up into the top. It's a little bit further down. So we will just move that down now. By going here, we can give it some more attributes here. So we can go margin top. And so from the top, we're going to say, let's put 55 pixels. Oh, it's good to put actually 55 there. And then we don't want the content below. Let's see here, the content below, we don't want it smushed up into here either. So we're going to give it some margin bottom. And we'll also give it 55 pixels. That should do it. There we go. So now that's going to move the welcome. There we go. And we can't see it yet, the effect of the margin on the bottom, but if there was more content here, it would be separated. Let's also get that color in here, this background color. So that's a style again. So we can just target In this case, so in this situation, we target the H1 element. In the background, because we want to change the whole background, we can target the body element actually. So if we just go up here and target the body, we can give it a background color. And we'll give it a background color. Now the color that I had used before is EED773. That's a hexadecimal. But you can use any color that you want. And actually, I'll show you how to kind of get those hexadecimal colors here. So you can Google just quickly the color picker. And perfect. So see, there's the hexadecimal value. If you want to change colors, you can slide this and move this around and get your desired color. And you can copy this hexadecimal, or you can use the RGB as well, I believe. I'm gonna stick to using the hexadecimal. It's just sort of what I got used to using, but it really doesn't matter. So let's see if that actually works. Yep, there's that color change. So that's great. Yeah, and we'll just get coding with what's the next part we should get coding with? Okay, let's move into this comment section here. So this is where the comments will display with the username and the date. All right, I forgot to come back to why we're going to use Bootstrap. So one of the benefits of Bootstrap, like I said, was keeping things mobile responsive. So if we minimize this, we can see that it all adjusted to the screen size. And if we keep changing the screen size, you can see that it continues to adjust. And that's because of Bootstrap. It's using things like, what are they called again? Anyway, it adjusts the size to make it fit and make it fit. So that's super handy, because otherwise we'd have to do lots of CSS code. Maybe not lots of CSS code, but you have to do more coding to make that happen. So it's great to use that feature. And if we want, we can use, if you hit F12 in Google Chrome, get the developer tools. Okay, I've already got it open here, but yours probably will open into something like this. And your thing here, the console, whatever, might be on the bottom. You can adjust that by just hitting here and docking it to wherever you'd like. But if you hit this button here, toggle device toolbar, you can choose which device, an iPhone or an iPad, whatever, to see what it would look like in that device. And you can see it responded to this device. So that's one of the benefits of using Bootstrap. So we're going to use a Bootstrap card to make this element here. So I will just show you where that is in Bootstrap. So we're going to scroll to the components, I believe. Yeah, card. And here you can look at the code for the card. So here's sort of the base code here. And that would make a card that looks exactly like this right here. So this code here makes a card that looks like this. We're going to adapt this code to make our card look more like this, but it's pretty much the same concept. So we're just not going to have an image, and we're not going to have a button here. So that's what we're going to code right now. So that's going to be underneath the welcome page. Remember, we already gave it margin bottom, and that's going to push the content down. So we're going to give this div tag here, and we're going to give it a class equal to card. And in Bootstrap, we can actually add margin directly without having to put it in the custom styles here. We can add margin by using MB and give it margin bottom. MB stands for margin bottom 2. Because we don't want, as we can see here, we don't want things smushing too close up here either. We want some nice spacing, but of course you can just fiddle around and get whatever spacing that you want. And so that's going to be the class of the card. And we're going to, there it is, there's the class for the card. So just to kind of drive this point home, the part that we're building is essentially this, and we're going to fill in this card now within this div. We're going to give this div an ID though, so that we can personally target this div in our style sheet, and we'll call this comments because that's where the comments are going to go. Then underneath that, we're going to create another div. This is going to be with the class. This is going to be the card body. That's where the content is going to go in the card. And then within this card, we are going to add in an H5. which is just like a header, but smaller than an H1. And we're going to give this ID, we don't need this header to have an ID. We'll just give it the class, actually, because the class will have the styles in it. Card title. Okay. And this will be the name. And eventually we're hard coding this right now just to kind of see what it's going to look like. But when we actually connect this to the database through the server, this will be dynamically generated with the actual user's name. And then we will, underneath that, we're going to make another header here. And this is going to be the card subtitle. And that's, again, just a style. And we're going to use the Bootstrap styles, and we're going to mute that text. And this will be the date. And we can put in any date that we want. 2018, there we go. So essentially these two portions here are going to replicate these two portions here. So again, the muted text, you can see it just sort of gives it a different color. The subtitle is sort of smaller. This one's more obvious to the user. So that's really the only difference there. And then we'll have to add in right below here where the actual comment will go. So here we'll say this is where the comment will go. And again, this is going to be dynamically generated from the database. But for now, just to get an idea of where everything is, we're just going to hard code it just to get a sense of where things are. And actually, we do want a break tag here. Otherwise, it's going to smush up all on it there. So if we refresh this now, there we go. So we can see that this is the card. And I actually did forget to do something with Bootstrap, but I'll show you that in a moment. And then we can change the background color as well. So in Bootstrap, you can find here that it's going to be in the layout that you need to wrap everything in a container, essentially. So all of this needs to go into a container. And I'll show you what that does. So we can just wrap this in a div with the class equaling container. And we will copy and paste this div, or I'm going to cut it actually and put it at the bottom to wrap everything within there. So what this is going to do is you can see it's going to basically give margin on both sides of it. Now, if you don't want that margin on both sides, and sometimes you don't, and you want it to span the full length of the page as it's doing kind of right now, then you can use the container fluid class. But this will, we don't want to do that, so we're just going to style this. I mean, it just depends on what style you want to use. So if we refresh this now, we can see, there we go. With the container class, it has smushed it in here. And if we go like this, we can see that it is going to remain responsive as well. So that's perfect. So now we just need to give this background color, that green color. We just need to give it that green color now. So so what we'll do is target the card body, which is right here, and give it that background color. So if we go here and target the card body. Now the way you target a class, so in this case here, we were targeting the entire element, all of the body, all H1 elements, but sometimes we don't want to target an entire element. We just want to target just the card body. So, and we want every card body to be the same color. So we're going to target this class. So every class that's called card body, we are going to give it a background color. And the way we target a class is with a dot. The way we target an ID is with a hashtag. The way we target an element is with nothing. So we'll target the class card body. And we're going to give it a background color again. Scroll down here. And I'm going to use the hexadecimal again, which the green color here is B6D463. And I'll show you something else here. So we can actually see this color here. Can we do this? We should be able to set the background color of the element. Yeah, so if you double click this here, you can actually move it around. And this is sort of the same as the color picker on Google. So you can do that as well within Visual Studio Code. So we're going to save that, and let's make sure that that color actually took effect. If we refresh here, there we go. We can see that this color is taking effect here. So I'll just close this down. So we can see here that now we've built this portion here. And the next part we're going to do is bring in this horizontal line right here. So the way you do that is pretty easy. So all we'll have to do is right down here, we're going to put a horizontal line break. And we'll just refresh that to make sure that that worked, and there it is. So now we're going to make this portion of the front end here. And the way we're going to do that is, again, by making another div. So underneath the horizontal line, we're going to make a div, another div tag. And with this div tag, we're going to have a class, we're going to give this tag ID equals, and I'm going to call it the main content. And I do have to put this in quotes, so yep. And now the reason I'm calling this the main content is because before, the first time this loads up without any comments, this portion here is not going to exist. It's just going to be this because there's no comments to load yet. So this portion here is sort of the main content, and that's how I'm viewing it. You can call it whatever you want. If you change the name, you're going to have to just make sure to keep using that different name in all your fields. For example, in the CSS styles. So we have here an H3 header that says leave your comments below, exclamation mark, and I think leave you comments. This should be your comments, so let's correct that now. Leave your comments below. Great, and then we're going to make another div tag here, and inside this one, so this div is going to be, we're going to give it the ID make comment. So the reason that I'm giving this one make comment is because in this portion, we're going to, so we just made this leave comments below in the main comment area. But now we're going to make this portion, and I want to specifically put this in a div tag called make comment, because here is where the person will put their name and their actual comment. So this is where we're actually going to make the comment. Essentially, I'm just sort of dividing up the page in little chunks so I can, move them around and change them if we need to. And there's no right or wrong way to do this. It's sort of just whatever, however you see it, whatever the best way to do it. And basically, you want your code to be readable, and you want it to be easy to maintain. So that's sort of the principles you want to keep in mind, really, here when you're doing this. So we got the div class. So now what we're going to do is, this is a form, right? This is a form because people can input stuff. And we'll use a Bootstrap form. And again, if we go to components and you scroll down, you can see form. And essentially, again, this code here equals this code up here. Again, we're not going to make this exactly. We're going to change it to fit our needs, but we're sort of following this structure. This is where the code is sort of coming from here. But we're going to adjust it to fit our need. So first, we need another div tag here. We're going to build this form group right now, right? We need a div class here with the form group, because that's how we're going to make this name portion here, right here. So this is going to have the class, and we're going to make that equal form-group. Okay, and we'll hit enter. Oops, we don't want to do that. Enter. And then inside of this, if we refer back to our Bootstrap, we have the label and the input. So we're going to put the label here. Okay, so label. And we're going to give it, this label is going to be for the name input. And we're going to call this label name. So what do I mean when I say for name? All right, that's kind of a little strange thing there. Well, for name is going to refer to this input field here. So first, we're going to give this input field, we can give it a class, and it's going to be form control. Again, that came from Bootstrap. And the type of input that's coming into this form, or into this input field, is text. You could change that to numbers or dates, whatever is going into that text. But for this case, it's going to be text. And this ID is going to be name. So this for name refers to the input class with the ID name, which is right here. And so let's just see how that looks. Let's test while we put this together. There we go. So as you can see, great. We don't have it centered yet, and well, we do need to make it a little smaller, so no problem. What we can do is we could target the ID name in the custom styles and change its width, or we can do an inline style. So we'll just do that to get a variety here, see what you can do. You can target here, and you just have to put width, and just like in CSS, we'll give it 250 pixels. You just put that in there, and let's save that and check it out. So there we go. It's kind of, now it's more the right size. And what we want to do is we want this to be required. When we fill this out, we don't want someone to not put in their name when they submit and have an empty name here. We don't want this to be empty, so we're going to force the user to keep it. And you'll see that if we try to submit this form without putting something here, it'll send a nice little message here stating that this is a required field. So we'll implement that. I think that's the HTML5 thing, maybe. Anyway, we just implement that. And it's kind of good. It's good to know. It's good to have that sort of handy. You could also use JavaScript to validate this input field. If you have something more complicated, you could throw in regular expressions to make sure it's an email, make sure it's a postcode, whatever. But we're not going to get that complicated for this. We're just going to put the required field there. But those are options for you. And if you want, if we want more videos like that, you can just let me know in the comments, and I can make those kind of tutorials as well. So now underneath this form group, we need another form group for the actual comments. So we'll call this, ID equals, and this div tag ID will be called, this is the form group. So we need another form group class here, form-group. And then inside of here, we're going to have another label, and it's going to be for. So this label is going to be for the message, because this is where the comment, the message, the user is going to type their message to us. Okay, and so here we can just call it type comment below, exclamation mark, nice call to action there, and we could put input here. And in the input field, actually this is not going to be an input, because it's going to be a text area, because we want, should close that there, oops. We want the user to be able to make multi-line comments. So basically, they can type here a lot, and they can, this little corner here, they can pull it down and create a nice long comment if they want to. So we're going to make it a text area. And again, it is also going to be required. We're going to force that on people. They have to write a comment to make a comment. And the class in this case is going to be, so from Bootstrap, we're going to give it form-control like that. And then we're going to give this text area the ID of message, because again, this label is for this input text area called message. You can also use this to target it again, remember, in our CSS if we want to. So let's save that, and let's see what that's looking like now over here. Let's see if we got, yeah, there we go. So that's good. And again, as you can see, it's a text area. We can enlarge it. So the next part we need here is this button. So underneath the form group div, but still within the make comments section, because it's not part of these form groups, but it's still in the make comment div, we want the button right underneath there. So we're going to add in the button here, and like so, and we're going to give this button the type button. And the class, and this again, we're going to use Bootstrap here to style this button. So it's going to be a button, but then it's not just going to be a button, it's going to be a button success. So we want it to be a button, but we also want it to be green and have that nice sort of success color. So if we refresh this, there it is. So it's very tiny. We actually have to put some text inside of it. Let's put comment. No, that's not how you spell comment. There we go. And now, boom, there we go. So now we just have to center this content. So how are we going to do that? Well, one way we can do that is by using this div tag we called main content. So what we can do here is go back to our custom styles, and this time we're going to style the ID, and not a $, but a hashtag, and it's called main content. And we're going to target that element with the ID main content, which is that div tag, and we're going to text align all the text to center, just like we did before with the H1. And we're going to give the margin top, because we don't want it to be smushed too much, 25 pixels. Again, you can change that, fiddle with that how you want, and there we go. So now you can see that the text has moved, but the input field has not moved over just yet. So what we can do to do that, that's because we just targeted text align, so that's no problem. We gave this input field an ID name, so all we have to do is we can target that ID name. And in order to make this, because it's not text, we can't just text align an input field center. So instead what we can do is we can change its display type to block. And then we can also, once it's block, we can give the margin on the left and right side, or sorry, top and bottom 0, and the left and right auto. So this is the top and bottom margin, and this is the left and right margin. If we give the left and right margin auto, it'll just center it, and boom, there it is, right in the center. Now, if that was sort of confusing, all of this display, and what, is there something wrong with this display? Are we missing something? Why is it coming up? Is it coming up like that? It's not spelt right. There we go. Also, maybe we don't need it to be, well, if that's the case, do we not need it to be? Okay, maybe it'll work just without the, oh, it looks like, look at that. So it looks like maybe we, well, maybe it does work without the display block. Okay, well, that's good to know. We can just use the margin left right here. But if this isn't making sense to you, we can look at W3 Schools again, and you can look at their CSS tutorial here, just to kind of fill yourself in with kind of some more details about CSS. And we were looking at margins, so you can go to CSS Margins, and if you scroll down here, you can see that, yeah, so this is, I believe, the top, the right, the left, and the top, the right, the bottom, and then the left, I believe. Yeah, you can kind of look through some of these examples if you just want to kind of a refresher here on the CSS, or if you want me to make a more detailed video on CSS specifically, I can definitely do that as well. Just let me know in the comments. So it looks like we have completed it. Yeah, it looks like it's the same. So yeah, in the next video, we'll just continue on building this. If you like what you're seeing, if you like this content, please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.